So the dust is now settled on Dave Allen versus Arslanbek Makhmudov, and we need to obviously talk about Makhmudov because there's a lot of talk. It's going to be Anthony Joshua next. We'll do that in a separate video later on today. But Dave Allen, in his interview with Jamie Ward after, was very open about what happened. He spoke of the fact, and these are his words, saying that I guess I'm just not good enough for this particular level. But he also mentioned the fact that he's not finished. Now, as frustrating as that fight was to watch, if you were a fan of Dave Allen, and I would imagine it was frustrating. In fact, it was frustrating watching it live at the time as well, because you essentially seen a fighter who had a fight that was winnable, just not for whatever reason want to commit to a sustained attack. Because when he did commit, like I think it was again round 9, a lot of success. Landing uppercuts, landing body shots. Makhmudov is extremely limited, very limited fighter. But Dave Allen, for whatever reason, just couldn't really. Was it physically? Is it mentally? I don't know. But he just couldn't really seem to find that resolve, for want of a better word, to let the shots go and to really, because he backed Makhmudov up the rope so many times, to let those shots go and to really, grab the bull by the horn, so to speak. He just didn't do that. Now, he did speak, obviously, in the subsequent interview saying that he's not finished. That then begs the question, what is next for Dave Allen? So if he's not finished, if he plans on carrying on and staying active, certainly for the next year, because he did, I think, even before the defeat, I think in subsequent interviews this week, speak of the fact that he's probably not going to be around in the sport of boxing anyway, maybe much more than a year or so. And it's been a long career. It's been a tough career. Last night was tough. It wasn't the worst beating he'd ever taken, not by, and he took some shots in there, but that wasn't that beating was probably on one of the lighter ends in comparison to some of the other ones he's taken, like against David Price, Tony Oka, Luis Ortiz, etc. So Allen still feels like he's got something to give. And based upon his performance last night against Makhmudov, you're talking about Makhmudov, a fringe world level challenger. That's what he is. He's fringe world level. Allen was able to have moments in there. So I would say with Dave Allen, domestic level is, and there's no shame in that. Like, domestic level is a decent level. There are many fighters. Like, I mean, if you think of it, like Hughie Fury, has he ever even won a European title? He's won a British title, so you could class him as a domestic level fighter. So there's no shame in that. There's absolutely no shame in it. I think with Dave Allen, I think a British title is still there. And I think that British title has always been the goal for Dave Allen. He could have won the Commonwealth title when he fought Lenroy Thomas. I think that the first fight, again, if you're a fan of Dave Allen, you would look at that Lenroy Thomas fight and say it was frustrating, because Thomas is quite a limited heavyweight as well. He was stopped in a round or two by Joe Joyce, in 2018. I think that was not long after he fought Dave Allen. So he's a limited fighter. Allen should have probably got the win that night. I'm not saying legitimately. I think it was there for him to win. He didn't. And then obviously the subsequent rematch, we know what happened. The clash of heads, that is what that is. BS happens, or well, a word happens, not BS, but you know what I mean. So I think now at this stage there is still a chance. I think people like Sam Sexton have won British titles, so I think it's still possible for Dave Allen. I think that's the road he needs to go down. He needs to have a look at the winner of Fraser Clark versus Jamie TKV. I know he's already fought Fraser Clark, and yeah, like Fraser Clark beat him handily. At the end of the day, Fraser Clark has had one fight since that devastating, which was I think this day last year. He's had one fight, or maybe it was yesterday last year, it was one of those, but it's a year ago, since that devastating knockout defeat to Fabio Wardley. And he fought Ebenezer Tete, for God's sake. Ebenezer Tete, that guy is got to be pushing 50. Never mind what BoxRec say. Man's got to be pushing 50. And yeah, Fraser Clark went in there and dispatched him in a round. But like, what's that really going to tell you? You beat Ebenezer Tete, for God's sake. Dylan White beat Ebenezer Tete. That's really saying it all. So I think that maybe we need to Dave Allen fully focused, fully fit, because I try and look for the positive in something. And with Dave Allen, although he fought a very frustrating fight to watch, he still showed more mental resolve in the week leading up to this fight, more so than I've seen from him before. And I think that if he can keep himself in that good mindset, he still is a little bit too heavy. I don't care what anyone says. Like, he was definitely, you could see the protruding belly. You could see that he was carrying. I reckon he's carrying, at the very least, he was 250 something. I reckon if he can get into the mid 240s, like 245, 244, I think that there's a British title in him. I do. I think there's a British title in him. I think that this type of opponent, And I think maybe this type of thinking, because at the end of the day, it wasn't like Eddie Hearn put a gun to his head and said, fight Arslanbek Makhmudov. Apparently there was a list of names, and this is the one of the names that was, put to him, and it's the one he picked. I think that this type of thing is probably not going to happen again. I mean, it might, but I seriously doubt it. I think maybe look to go down the domestic scene. And there's a chance that you could pick up a British title at the end of the day. You've got guys like Solomon Dakers. Solomon Dakers, although he looked good on the Alexander Usyk Danny Dubois undercard, he's a very limited heavyweight, very horrendously limited. Honestly, I would think Dave Allen would have the beating of him. I do. I think he'd have the beating of him. TKV, he looked good against David Adelaide. That's the first time I've ever seen Jamie TKV look good. That's the first time. I wouldn't pick him against Adelaide personally. I think David Adelaide has a little bit too much for Dave Allen. I think he's just too fast, too athletic, and just has too much good punching power. But Fraser Clark, at the end of the day, we don't know what way Big Fraser is going to be. At the end of the day, as I said, when he fought Dave Allen, he hadn't been, he hadn't had a dint put in his head by Fabio Wardley. So again, we don't know what way he's going to be. So I think the domestic scene, there's definitely something there still for Dave Allen. There absolutely is. So there may very well yet be another twist in the tail of Dave Allen. And again, if the stars align, I do genuinely, truthfully believe a British title is there for him. And that's, again, and I say it, a British title is nothing to turn your nose up at. It's a very good achievement. It's a brilliant achievement. As I said, there are fighters like Hughie Fury who've won the British title. They're not going to go on any further. That's still a good achievement. For many of them, that's like a world title fight. I remember when Sam Sexton did I forget who he beat for the British title, actually. It was Gary Cornish, I think he beat him years ago. It was like all his Christmases and birthdays came at once. He was emotional. Because for certain fighters, they know, and Dave Allen's not stupid, he knows that, he said it, look, I'm not good enough, you're not going to be world champion. Fair enough, all right? Not everyone can do that. But to have something like that, a British title, it'd mean a lot. So, yeah, and like obviously, you've defended 3 times to win it outright, but nevertheless, you're still in the history books as British champion. That Lonsdale belt is more prestigious than a lot of titles. And I think that newer boxing fans, I've noticed anyway, with, like I say, newer boxing fans, people who've maybe come into the sport off the back of Tyson Fury, maybe Alexander Usyk Fury stuff, they don't really seem to me to appreciate what that British title means. That British title is one of the most prestigious belts in boxing. Is it one of the more high-level titles? No. But the prestige, the history that follows it. You have fighters who, they just want to be British champion. They'll set that as a goal. They can do better than British champion, but for them, that's a major box to tick on the road. So there's absolutely nothing to be, disgraced at or sneered at or anything to win a British title, absolutely. So I think Dave Allen, if he's planning on sticking around, that's the road he needs to go down. The big fights in Sheffield, it was a great atmosphere last night, but the big fights in Sheffield, they can still happen. But the names like Makhmudov, and God forbid, you were looking at, I'm not saying he is, but, God forbid, like a Jagba, a Tauma, people like that. It's like, nah, man, no. I think what little time you have in the sport, the ability that we see on occasions, and that's why it's frustrating, because you do see a bit of ability from Dave Allen. I think what's there, try and make the most of it. That's what I got to say. So that's what I think is going to be next for Dave Allen. Those are my thoughts on that. Let me know yours in the comment section below. I actually finally got the Rode mic working, so hopefully this sounds good. I'm going to admit it, for my shame, I couldn't for the life of me figure out how to get these things working. That's because the battery was dead on both of them. What can I say? I ain't tech savvy at all. But they're working now, thank God. And they're quite nice, so now I've got 2 good mics. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Hope you enjoyed the video as always, people. If you could, smash the like button, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. Until next time.